This transparent proclamation establishes the essence of the content, clarifying its origins from the vast realms of the internet. The creator, in a gesture of pure transparency, asserts the video's foundation on pre-existing knowledge, emphasizing its educational and non-violent essence to the audience. Robert Willie Pickton. The mere mention of his name sends shivers down the spine, conjuring images of unspeakable horror and brutality. Pickton was not just a pig farmer, he was a predator lurking on the fringes of Vancouver, Canada. This is the harrowing tale of Robert Willie Pickton, the man who transformed from a humble farmer into a monstrous figure, leaving a trail of terror and devastation in his wake. Imagine a place so steeped in evil that the very air seems to crackle with malice. Pickton's victims, often lured to the farm with promises of money or drugs, were trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Body parts were fed to the pigs, their bones crushed and scattered across the property. The farm, once a symbol of rural life, became synonymous with horror, a place forever tainted by the evil that unfolded within its boundaries. Robert Pickton's entry into the world was far from the idyllic image one might conjure when picturing a rural farm. Born on October 24, 1949, he was delivered into a world of neglect and dysfunction on his family's pig farm in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Willie and his brother David grew up amidst the dirt and chaos of the farm, often left to fend for themselves, their emotional needs largely ignored. By the age of 14, he had dropped out of school altogether, his future uncertain, his spirit likely already wounded by years of neglect and social isolation. The path from troubled child to cold-blooded killer is rarely linear, often paved with traumatic experiences and missed opportunities for intervention. One particularly disturbing incident involved the slaughter of Willie's pet calf. This brutal encounter with death, devoid of any emotional sensitivity or explanation, left an indelible mark on Willie's psyche, normalizing violence and death in a way no child should ever experience. Neglect, trauma, and the normalization of violence had twisted his perception of right and wrong, creating a monster lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the opportunity to emerge. At the tender age of 14, already scarred by a childhood of neglect and warped by exposure to brutality, Willie Pickton found himself adrift. He became a butcher's apprentice. The skills he honed in the butcher shop, the dismemberment, the disposal of remains, would later prove invaluable in his crimes. Pickton, the butcher's apprentice, was unwittingly preparing for a far more horrific role, one that would see him use his knowledge to erase the evidence of his monstrous deeds. As Pickton matured, his social awkwardness and inability to form meaningful relationships worsened. The only human contact he sought out was with women on the fringes of society, particularly sex workers from Vancouver's impoverished downtown Eastside. He lured them to his farm with promises of money and drugs, exploiting their vulnerabilities and trapping them in a nightmare of their own. Pickton, the butcher's apprentice, had become something far more monstrous, his descent into darkness complete. As the 1990s progressed, a growing unease settled over Vancouver. Women, many of them sex workers from the downtown Eastside, were vanishing at an alarming rate. Fear rippled through the community. The women of the downtown Eastside, their lives already marginalized, were now being erased altogether, their stories left untold, their absence a gaping wound in the heart of the city. While fear gripped Vancouver, a sense of dread began to coalesce around Pickton's farm. Whispers of strange occurrences and late-night activities circulated among those who frequented the seedier underbelly of the city. Pickton, with his quiet demeanor and unassuming nature, had successfully blended into the fabric of the community, his monstrous acts concealed behind the facade of a simple pig farmer. Precious time was slipping away, and with each passing day, Pickton's reign of terror continued unchecked. As the investigation into the missing women stumbled forward, a chilling pattern began to emerge. Pickton, with his keen understanding of their desperation, knew precisely how to exploit their vulnerabilities. He would lure them to his farm with promises of money, drugs, or a place to stay, preying on their need to escape the harsh realities of their daily lives. The women who disappeared into the night, their lives cut short, were not just statistics or nameless victims. For years, the families of the missing women had lived with the agonizing uncertainty of their loved ones' fates. In 2002, a routine police visit to Pickton's farm, unrelated to the missing women, would inadvertently uncover a crucial piece of evidence. A search warrant, executed in connection with an illegal firearms possession charge, led officers to a grisly discovery: personal belongings of some of the missing women, hidden away in one of the farm's outbuildings. The families of the missing, their hopes rekindled by this unexpected breakthrough, clung to the possibility that their loved ones might still be alive. Section 2. Unmasking Evil. The Raid on the Pig Farm. The full-scale police raid on Pickton's farm in 2002 was unlike anything Canadian law enforcement had ever witnessed. The property, once a symbol of rural life, was transformed into a macabre crime scene, its grounds yielding a horrifying testament to Pickton's crimes. As forensic teams meticulously combed through the farm's outbuildings, barns, and surrounding fields, the true extent of the horror began to unfold. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a gruesome olfactory assault that hinted at the gruesome discoveries to come. Human remains scattered across the property and buried in shallow graves painted a chilling picture of Pickton's modus operandi. Bones, teeth, and scraps of clothing, often mixed with animal remains, pointed to a depravity that defied comprehension. The discoveries sent shockwaves through the nation and beyond. The farm, once a place of whispers and speculation, was now a confirmed killing ground, a macabre testament to the depths of human evil. The sheer volume of evidence, the sheer scale of the carnage, overwhelmed investigators, who were forced to confront the reality that they were dealing with one of the most prolific serial killers in history. The media descended upon the farm, their cameras capturing the grim spectacle for a horrified public. The images, beamed across the country and around the world, shattered any lingering doubts about Pickton's guilt and forced a nation to confront the dark underbelly of its own society. Section 3. Justice Delayed and Imperfect. The Trial and Conviction of Robert Pickton. The trial of Robert Willie Pickton began in 2007, fraught with legal complexities and emotionally draining testimony. Pickton faced charges for the murders of 6 women. The prosecution presented Pickton as a cunning predator who lured his victims with promises of drugs and money. The courtroom was filled with grief and anger as family members testified. Their testimonies painted a poignant picture of the human cost of Pickton's crimes. The women were mothers, daughters, sisters, and friends, leaving an unfillable void. In December 2007, the jury found Pickton guilty on 6 counts of second-degree murder. Pickton was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole for 25 years. The arrest and conviction of Robert Pickton brought a semblance of closure to a dark chapter in Vancouver's history. Yet the relief was intertwined with sorrow and anger, as systemic failures and societal neglect became impossible to ignore. The investigation, marred by delays and missteps, exposed a flawed system that failed to protect the vulnerable. The police faced accusations of indifference and incompetence for their slow response to the disappearances. A pervasive attitude within law enforcement viewed these women as less deserving of protection. The women, often dismissed as drug addicts or prostitutes, were rendered invisible by a devaluing system. The failures extended beyond the police department. A lack of resources and societal indifference created a perfect storm for Pickton to thrive. The women were failed by both the system and a society that turned its back on them. The case of Robert Pickton became a searing indictment of a society that allowed such horrors to occur. The shadow of Robert Pickton's crime still hangs heavy over Vancouver. Families of the victims continue to grapple with their grief, their lives forever altered. The trial provided some justice but left many questions unanswered. The downtown Eastside bears the brunt of the trauma. The streets are a constant reminder of the women who vanished. Memorials honor the victims and keep their memories alive. Pickton's crime sparked a national conversation about violence against women. Amidst the pain, there is a glimmer of hope. The grim saga of Robert Willie Pickton, the pig farmer who transformed into a monstrous figure of violence, serves as a chilling parable for our times. It lays bare the dark underbelly of society, exposing the vulnerabilities of the marginalized and the systemic failures that allowed such horrors to unfold. Pickton's reign of terror, though finally brought to an end, continues to resonate as a stark reminder of the human capacity for evil and the devastating consequences of indifference. It compels us to confront uncomfortable truths about our own society, forcing us to acknowledge the deep-seated biases and systemic inequalities. In the aftermath of tragedy, it is tempting to turn away from the darkness, to seek solace in the belief that such horrors could never happen again. But the legacy of Robert Pickton demands more than just remembrance. It demands action. We must address the systemic failures and societal ills that allowed such a tragedy to occur. Reforming police practices and ensuring accountability are crucial steps. We must invest in social programs for those struggling with poverty, addiction, and mental health issues. Challenge the stigma attached to sex work, advocating for their safety and well-being. Education plays a vital role in preventing future tragedies. By fostering empathy, understanding, and respect for all members of society, we can create a culture that values human life in all its forms. Honor the memory of the victims by working tirelessly to create a world where such horrors are never repeated. Transform our grief and anger into a catalyst for positive change. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to my YouTube stories. Your support means the world to me, and I'm incredibly grateful for every one of you who takes the time to engage with my content. If you enjoyed what you heard and want to hear more, please don't forget to subscribe, follow, and share with your friends. It really boosts my motivation to create more exciting content for you all. Once again, thank you for your time and support. I truly appreciate it. All the best to all of you from me, Threz.